Today we're going to talk about the Chapter 12 Coding Guidelines. Chapter 12 in the code book is the diseases of the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. First guideline, just some general information before we get to an example. Category L89 is for pressure ulcers, and it identifies both the site of the ulcer as well as the stage of the ulcer. So you're going to see them as subterms for the various stages as well as where they are. And we'll be talking a little bit about the difference between an unspecified stage and an unstageable ulcer. They are two different things. An important thing to remember: to assign as many codes from category L89 as needed to identify all the pressure ulcers a patient has, if that's applicable. It's not uncommon if someone has come in with pretty bad skin breakdown for them to have multiple ulcers. So we want to be sure that we capture all of those. So here's an example of that first guideline. Patient has a stage 4 pressure ulcer over the right heel. That's 9 by 10 centimeters. It invades muscle and fascia, as well as a stage 2 pressure ulcer of the left elbow. So we want to get both of those. It's interesting to me that they're telling you not only the stage but also how deep it goes. That's usually you'll have one or the other in the real world, but in this case the documentation is telling us both. So here on the right I have the index pathway for both of the pressure ulcers, the heel and the elbow. And it refers back to this guideline that you put as many codes in there as you need from this category to identify all the pressure ulcers a patient has. I also have here for the instructional note, choose the 5th character 1 for the right heel, the 5th character 2 for the left elbow. The 6th character is indicating the stage for each of those. When we talk about unstageable pressure ulcers, this just means the doctor can't see them to see how deep they go. Therefore, they're called unstageable. And this would happen especially when you have a burn and you have a very thick eschar over the burn, so the doctor cannot see how deep the ulcer goes. He just knows it's there for whatever reason. Different radiological studies could show that the skin is missing below this eschar, which is like a really thick scab over the tissue. But for whatever reason, the doctor cannot tell you what stage it is. This is an unstageable ulcer. An unspecified stage is when the ulcer is there, you can see it, but the doctor did not, in his documentation, stage it. Two different things. In this particular example, the pressure ulcer of the right lower back was documented as unstageable due to the eschar covering the ulcer. And there's your index pathway. The 5th character is 3 for the right lower back, and the 6th character is 0 for unstageable. The next guideline has to do with the documented stage, where the doctor does not give you the stage but does describe how deep the ulcer goes. And there is a diagram in the code book that shows this on page 697 in the 2017 code book. In future versions of the code book, it may be on a different page, but it is there, as well as being described in the stage 2 or whatever stage. It describes how the thickness, how deep the ulcer goes on the skin. So don't be surprised if sometimes you don't get a stage, but you are told how deep it goes, and then you have some resources here for knowing how to stage that. The next guideline has to do with pressure ulcers that are documented as healed. And the guideline tells us that when that is so, we don't have to have any code for the ulcer. You're going to code what's going on. In other words, in this case, there's a follow-up exam and a history of a skin disease, but no code for the ulcer is assigned. This guideline has to do with patients admitted with pressure ulcers documented as healing, and the actual language in the code book says healing. You see a pressure ulcer, pressure, stage 2 sacral region, with a 6th character of 2 for stage 2, gives us L89.152. I also have here in red on the right, you see that this is a new situation. For ulcers that were present on admission but healed at the time of discharge, you're assigning the code for the site and the stage of the ulcer at the time of admission. This is new. So even though the ulcer is healed by the time of discharge, you are going to code what it was at the time of admission. The next guideline has to do with those times when a pressure ulcer becomes worse during admission. And this particular guideline was changed in 2017. In 2016, if that happened, we would just code the worse or the higher stage. But now our guidelines tell us to have two codes, one for the site and stage where it was on admission, and a second code for that same ulcer site and the highest stage reported during the stay. This did change. This is one of those times where a coder who's not paying attention to the guidelines could really get caught, because he or she is going to code to the earlier guideline and not realize that it's changed. If you have any questions about the Chapter 12 coding guidelines, please post them in the discussion board and I will attempt to answer them. I hope you have a good day.